Hi, this is Julie Bisbee with the Oklahoman. I'm here today with Laura Pittman, the Deputy Director of Female Offender Operations. It's a new position at Oklahoma's Department of Correction. So tell us a little bit about what you do at the Department of Corrections.
Sure. The new position is Deputy Director of Female Offender Operations. And basically this position is responsible for every aspect of care for female offenders that are within institutions within our system. So every institution from Mabel Bassett down through halfway houses.
How many women are in Oklahoma prisons?
As of last Friday, we're right at 2,500.
2,500?
Incarcerated within that segment of the system.
Okay. And where does Oklahoma stand nationally? And I guess it would be a per capita rate?
Sure. Oklahoma is at 129 per 100,000 in terms of female offenders incarcerated. The national rate is 69 per 100,000, so we're almost twice the national average.
And why are there so many Oklahoma women in prison?
Almost 40% of the women incarcerated in Oklahoma are incarcerated for some sort of drug offense. So the majority are in for drug offenses.
Would that be, I guess, what type of drug offense?
So possession or distribution.
Okay.
And it's almost split half and half between those two.
And what happens, I guess, you have so many women in prison, how does that impact the larger, I guess, society or the things that the state would have to?
One of the things that our incarceration rate really kind of reflects is that we choose to incarcerate a tremendous amount of low-risk offenders, being that they're nonviolent offenders. Again, it's for predominantly drug offenses. And it speaks to maybe some lack of diversion programs on the front end that other states may employ that we don't employ as much of. And many, I think, of our social ills, if you look at the characteristics of female offenders.
What are some of those characteristics?
Huge histories of trauma, huge histories of domestic violence, huge history, again, of substance use, which commonly goes with trauma and domestic violence, low socioeconomic status, poverty, low educational status, not a lot of substance abuse treatment programs and mental health treatment, in terms of catching people early and diverting them.
And are there any programs in the state that are currently working to kind of identify people who either have a mental health need, and I guess mental health and substance abuse are often intertwined. Are there any programs that are working right now to do
Right
that?
now in drug court in Oklahoma, we have about 4,400 people in drug court. That's both male and female. And I'm sure that, and I know, Department of Mental Health would love to expand that. In terms of mental health court, we only have a handful of mental health courts. But again, I'm sure that they would love to expand that given the finances to do so. Mm-hmm. They have a Smart on Crime initiative again this year, which is, those are two of the focus of the Smart on Crime initiative.
And I guess what would be the obstacle in expanding those programs? Obviously, they have shown themselves to be successful, or at least the statistics are pretty favorable at this point.
I think the major obstacle, again, is going to be funding, because you have to spend some money up front for the drug court and mental health court to really reap the benefits later on. But when you're looking at, several $1,000s per year for someone who might be in drug court or mental health court versus, $25,000, $30,000 a year for somebody who's incarcerated, it's a much better expenditure of money, but you do have to have that upfront money to be able to do that.
Okay. And when we talk about having so many women in prison, what are some of the other, I guess, ripple effects that stem from having that one person in prison, and how is that different between having a man in prison and having a woman in prison?
I think that the major ripple effect is going to be that women are typically the primary caretakers of the children. So when a mom comes to prison, her children have to go into someone else's custody, and usually it's not DHS custody, usually it's in the custody of grandparents.
Okay. And you are going to be trying to tackle this problem from the inside of, I guess, the prison walls.
Right.
They come to you, they've already been convicted. What kind of methods do you employ to make sure, I guess, that this person does not return?
Sure. The main thing that we'll be doing, I think, initially is really looking at everything that we do. So we'll look at how do we classify women. We'll look at how do they move through our system. How do they move down in security. We'll look at what programs are we providing and are those meeting the needs of the women. We'll look at how much money are they able to earn, while they're incarcerated and while they're on work release. Do they have a sufficient nest egg, to be able to get out there and get housing and have employment and be able to take care of those children that they're going to be taking care of again. What
do you see is the biggest challenge for a woman who leaves prison? What is the biggest challenge?
There are huge challenges. Housing is always a major challenge for anybody who's coming out of being incarcerated. Obtaining employment is a huge challenge because now that person's a convicted felon, and understandably some employers are hesitant to hire people who are convicted felons.
Okay. And I guess, is there anything that, I guess, as a society or, people in the state, what can they do to kind of help stem this distinction? Obviously, Oklahoma, #1 in the nation for putting women in prison, is not a favorable thing. Is it policy? Is it programs? I mean, what do you feel like is the thing that could really sort of turn the statistic around?
I think it's policy and programs and again funding for some of those services that are not as available as we would like for them to be. So services for individuals who are seriously mentally ill, services for individuals with addiction issues, which are two of the two primary reasons why people become incarcerated.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.